The invitation was for a wedding I wasn't supposed to know about. The dress was for a ceremony I wasn't supposed to be at. And the groom, standing at the altar, was the man I was supposed to marry. My own sister was about to marry my fiancé, and she had invited half the city to watch, except me. She thought I would stay home and cry. She thought I would disappear. She thought she had won. But she didn't count on one thing. She didn't count on me walking through those doors. If this story touches you, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, drop a like, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. My name is Alara Vance, and my life, as I knew it, ended on a Tuesday afternoon with a photograph. I was living in Austin, working as a graphic designer, and I thought I had everything figured out. I had a career I was passionate about, a small but cozy apartment filled with plants that I somehow managed to keep alive, and I was engaged to a man I had loved since college. His name was Julian. We had met in a library of all places, both reaching for the same obscure science fiction novel. It felt like fate. We were the couple that friends pointed to and said, "They're going to make it." For 5 years, we built a life together. We were a team. We worked hard to save for a house. We shared dreams of traveling to Japan, and we supported each other through every career change and family drama. He was my anchor, my sounding board, my best friend. I never doubted him for a second. That unwavering trust was probably my biggest mistake. My younger sister, Clara, lived a very different life. To the outside world, she was vibrant and spontaneous, a free spirit who lived for adventure. To our mother, she was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. Clara could never keep a job. She had a string of failed relationships, and she was always in some kind of financial trouble. But she had a gift. She could charm anyone. She could walk into a room and instantly become the center of attention. And like a moth to a flame, I was drawn to her charisma. I loved her. I always thought I was protecting her, guiding her. In reality, I was just another person she was manipulating. She would often crash at my apartment when her living situation fell through. I'd lend her money I never expected back, and I'd spend hours listening to her dramatic tales of woe and triumph. Julian was always kind to her, but I started to notice a shift. A few months before everything fell apart, he became distant. He was working late more often, his phone was always face down, and his explanations for his absences felt rehearsed. I convinced myself it was the stress of his new job. He had just been promoted, and the hours were brutal. I ignored the unease that was bubbling in my gut because I didn't want to seem like the jealous, clingy fiancé. I told myself that love was built on trust, and I was going to be the bigger person. The first crack appeared at a family barbecue at our parents' house. Clara was there, fluttering around Julian like a social butterfly, touching his arm, laughing a little too loudly at his jokes. It bothered me, but I dismissed it. Then later, I overheard her whispering to our mother in the kitchen. I couldn't make out all the words, but I distinctly heard her say, "He's just not right for her. He needs someone more exciting." A chill ran down my spine, but before I could react, my mother caught my eye and quickly changed the subject. The denial was strong in my family. We didn't address problems. We swept them under the rug. My father, a quiet, passive man, just shuffled away. A few weeks later, the real blow came. Julian called me and said he needed to talk. We met at a coffee shop, and I knew the moment I saw his face that something was terribly wrong. He fidgeted with his cup, unable to meet my gaze. He told me he felt like he was trapped, that the life we were planning suddenly felt stifling. He said he needed to find himself. I sat there, frozen. This wasn't the man I knew. I asked if there was someone else, and he hesitated. A beat too long. He said no, but his eyes told a different story. He ended our 5-year relationship in a crowded coffee shop, surrounded by the scent of espresso and the chatter of strangers. My heart didn't just break, it was annihilated. In the weeks that followed, the silence from Clara was deafening. I called her, desperate for comfort, for the sibling I thought I had. She was distant, her voice laced with a strange, uncharacteristic patience. "It's for the best, Alara," she said. "You were too serious for him. You were holding him back." She didn't offer to come over. She didn't offer to get ice cream or let me cry on her shoulder. She just brushed me off as if I were an inconvenience. Then the rumors started. Mutual friends began calling me, their voices hesitant. "Is it true that Clara and Julian are together?" one asked. I laughed it off, saying it was crazy. But the laughter soon died in my throat when the official news came. A few days later, my mother called, and her voice was uncharacteristically bright. She was practically bubbling with fake excitement. "Ilara, I have something to tell you. I hope you'll be happy for your sister. Clara and Julian are getting married." I don't remember the rest of that conversation. I just remember the blood roaring in my ears. She had taken everything. She had stolen my fiancé, and in her mind, she had probably done me a favor. She had ruined my life and then acted as if she were the one winning a prize. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. It was Clara. I thought about ignoring it, but I answered. "Did you hear the news?" she cooed, her voice dripping with saccharine sweetness. "We're getting married. I know it's super awkward, but we just couldn't deny the connection anymore. It was an accident. We never meant to hurt you." She couldn't help herself. She laughed. It was a short, dismissive, arrogant laugh. A laugh that said, "I got the man, I got the attention, and you got nothing." The sound of it was like a physical blow. It was at that moment that my grief was replaced by a cold, calculating anger. I would not let her win. I would not just disappear. The wedding was scheduled for a grand estate outside of town. I found out all the details from a friend who was more loyal to me than to Clara's new performance. I knew the date. I knew the time. I knew the venue. In the days leading up to the event, I didn't cry. I didn't mope. I went quiet. I started to plan. I wasn't going to show up in a white dress and scream or object to the marriage. That's what she would expect. She would expect me to be a spectacle, a hysterical mess, the bitter ex. I wanted to do the exact opposite. I wanted to unsettle her. I wanted to make her feel the fear and confusion I had felt. I wanted to be the ghost at the feast, a silent reminder of the betrayal she had committed. The day of the wedding was beautiful, which felt like a cruel joke. The sky was a brilliant blue, the sun was warm, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming jasmine. I arrived at the estate as the guests were being seated. I wasn't dressed in black, and I wasn't dressed in white. I wore a sharp, elegant, deep emerald green suit. It was a statement. It was confidence. It was a stark contrast to the fairy tale aesthetic everyone else was adhering to. I slipped in just as the music started. I took a seat near the back, feeling the curious stares of guests who recognized me. I didn't care. I looked toward the altar. There he was. Julian, my Julian, standing at the front in a stiff, tailored tuxedo. He looked handsome, but he looked uncomfortable, like a man who had a thorn in his shoe. And then, the music swelled, the crowd gasped, and the doors at the back of the aisle swung open. It was the moment for the bride to make her entrance. But it wasn't Clara who walked through the door. It was the bride's procession, her mother, and then the maid of honor. The crowd was waiting for the bride. Suddenly, I saw a commotion at the back of the room. I couldn't believe my eyes. Julian, the groom, had just pushed past the other groomsmen and was speaking urgently to an usher. Then he did the one thing no one expected. He turned around, and he started walking away from the altar, against the procession. He was heading toward the entrance of the venue. People were whispering. The flower girl dropped a petal. The music faltered. The wedding had just stalled out. But this wasn't the bomb I had planned. Something bigger was happening. And then I saw why. The wedding was supposed to be at this exclusive, beautiful estate, but I noticed an argument happening in the foyer. I couldn't make out the words, but I could see Julian's shoulders tense. It wasn't just a sudden case of nerves. Something was deeply, terribly wrong. The guests started to murmur. No one knew what to do. The bride was still nowhere to be seen. The maid of honor was frantically texting on her phone. The officiant looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. A wedding without a bride? I thought I was here to be the disruption, but it seemed Clara had beaten me to it. The groom was in a heated whisper with the venue manager. I moved closer to the foyer, pretending to look for the restroom. I managed to overhear the manager speaking in a low, agitated tone. "The final deposit hasn't cleared, Mr. Cole. The payment was declined. We can't proceed without confirmation." Julian was pale. He started making frantic phone calls. I saw him dial a number, and his expression turned from confusion to pure rage. The truth, the final, spectacular truth, was about to come out. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from an unknown number. I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped. It was a photo of Clara, laughing in a hotel bar, with a half-empty glass of champagne in her hand. She was wearing a sweater I recognized. It was Julian's. How did I get this text? I didn't know. But it was clear that Clara had done the unthinkable. She had stolen my fiancé, and now, on the day of her grand celebration, she had apparently stolen something else, her own wedding fund. Julian's mother, who had always been cold to me, was in a state of panic. Julian's father was shouting into his own phone. It seemed Clara hadn't just lied to them about her past. She had lied about everything. She had conned them into thinking she was a wealthy heiress. The source of the wedding funds, which they had assumed were from her private savings, were actually, well, they had somehow been tied to Julian's own accounts. My mind raced. Had she lied to me about being broke all this time? Had she been manipulating us both financially? It was a betrayal that went far deeper than just an affair. Just then, a man from the catering company strode up to the groom and handed him a final bill. It was for the full amount of the reception. Julian looked at it, and the number seemed to drain the color from his face. I watched as he whispered something to his best man. The best man then walked over to my mother, who was sitting in the front row looking like a statue. I saw my mother shake her head violently. I had walked in ready to confront the woman who stole my fiancé. But I had just watched my fiancé walk out on our sister's wedding because she had stolen all his money, and the entire thing had just collapsed. A new, more intricate, and devastating picture was painting itself. Clara was a con artist. The money I had lent her all those years, the money she said was for rent, for her car, for her debt, it was all a lie. She had been pilfering me for years. The jewelry she flaunted, her good luck in getting that first-class upgrade, it was all funded by my hard-earned money. And then she'd made me her accomplice, calling me her biggest supporter. Julian saw me. He stormed over, his face a mask of fury and shame. "This is your fault," he hissed. "You told her about my savings. You told her I was a good investment." "That was years ago," I said, my voice calm. "We were still together." "It doesn't matter," he spat. "You have to fix this. You know how to fix these things. You're the fixer?" And just like that, the last remaining piece of the puzzle clicked into place. He didn't love her. He was a victim, just like me. But he was also a coward. He had let her drive the narrative. He had let us all believe he was leaving me for love, when in truth, he was leaving me for a mirage of wealth and excitement that had collapsed the moment reality hit. A silence fell. And then, the doors to the estate swung open, and Clara strolled in. The bride was here, finally, but she didn't look like a radiant bride. She looked hungover, wearing a sullen expression. She spotted Julian arguing with me, and a strangled, furious sound escaped her throat. "In front of everyone," she shrieked. What are you doing here? You're ruining my wedding." I didn't say a word. The chaos around me was its own perfect answer. The vendors were packing up, the food was going cold, and the guests were whispering and leaving. The wedding of my sister and my ex-fiancé had become a public, humiliating disaster of their own making. I turned away from them. I walked out of the venue, leaving the noise and the accusations behind. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The greatest revenge wasn't a clever speech or a perfectly planned entrance. It was the quiet satisfaction of watching their house of cards tumble down without me having to lift a finger. A few weeks later, I was back in my apartment, nursing a cup of tea and considering a life without the stress of my manipulative sister. My phone buzzed. It was Clara. "Alara, please. You have to help me. Julian's left me. He took everything. Please, I have no one. You're my only hope. I need money for a lawyer. Please, I'm family." I listened to her plea, the panic in her voice. She still hadn't apologized. She still saw me as nothing more than a resource. I took a long, slow breath. "Clara," I said, my voice cool and even. "The answer is no." She started to argue, to scream, to accuse me of being cold and heartless. I hung up. I blocked her number. My mother called me the next day. I let it go to voicemail. I was done being the family fixer. I was done being taken for granted. It was time to take care of myself. My life changed after that. I channeled my energy into my art. I stopped being a people pleaser and started setting real boundaries. I took a solo trip to Japan, the trip I was supposed to take with Julian. I wandered through the neon-lit streets of Tokyo and the serene temples of Kyoto, and for the first time in years, I felt free. The financial loss was significant, but the emotional and psychological freedom was priceless. I no longer had to worry about her lies, her demands, or her theatrical crises. My apartment felt bigger, my work felt more meaningful, and my future was completely my own. There's a lesson to be learned here, and I wish I'd understood it sooner. It's a lesson about love, loyalty, and the dangerous line between support and enablement. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who are designed to take advantage of us, and the only way to save ourselves is to let them go. My name is Alara Vance, and I lost a sister, but I found my boundaries. I lost a fiancé, but I found my freedom. And I walked into a wedding that day not to create a scene, but to find my own closure. And so, here we are, at the end of a story that began with betrayal and ended with something far more valuable than revenge. It's funny, isn't it? How life has a way of stripping away everything you thought was solid, only to reveal a foundation you never knew you had. Alara's story isn't just about a stolen fiancé or a sister's cruelty. It's about the moment we all face at some point in our lives. The moment when we have to look at the people we love and ask ourselves a terrifying question. Are they building me up, or are they slowly, quietly, tearing me down? For years, Alara believed she was being a good sister, a good partner, a good daughter. She gave and she gave and she gave, believing that love meant sacrifice, that family meant obligation, that if she just tried hard enough, she would finally be seen. But the painful truth she discovered is one that so many of us learn far too late. You cannot give someone enough love to make them love you back the way you deserve. You cannot earn respect through self-sacrifice. And you certainly cannot fix a person who has no intention of changing. Clara wasn't just a sister who made a mistake. She was a person who had built her entire identity around manipulation. She didn't just steal a fiancé. She stole Alara's sense of security, her trust, and her belief that the people closest to her had her back. And the most devastating part? She didn't even see it as wrong. In her mind, she was simply taking what she deserved, what she was entitled to. That's the danger of entitlement. It blinds you to the humanity of the people you're hurting. And Julian. Poor, pathetic Julian. He wasn't a villain in the traditional sense. He was something far more common and perhaps more dangerous. He was a coward. He didn't leave Alara because he fell out of love. He left because he was seduced by something shiny and new, by the promise of excitement and validation. He traded a woman who had stood by him for years for a woman who made him feel important. And in the end, he lost everything. His money, his reputation, and any chance at a genuine connection. But here's what I want you to take away from this story. Alara didn't win by destroying them. She won by refusing to let them destroy her. That's the real victory. It's not about getting even. It's not about making them suffer the way they made you suffer. It's about reaching a point where their actions no longer have power over your happiness. Think about that for a moment. How many of us are still carrying around wounds from people who hurt us years ago? How many of us are still replaying conversations, still fantasizing about that perfect moment of revenge, still letting the ghosts of past betrayals dictate our present? Alara could have spent years plotting her revenge. She could have tried to ruin Clara's reputation, or exposed Julian's secrets, or made their lives as miserable as they made hers. But she didn't. She chose something far more powerful. She chose to walk away. And that's the hardest choice of all. Because walking away means accepting that you will never get closure from them. It means accepting that they will never truly understand what they did, and they will never give you the apology you deserve. It means letting go of the hope that they will one day see the error of their ways and come crawling back, begging for forgiveness. It means closing that door and locking it, even though a part of you still wants to leave it open. But here's the beautiful thing about walking away. It creates space. Space for new people. Space for new opportunities. Space for the version of yourself that you were always meant to be before the world told you to shrink, to compromise, to accept less than you deserve. Alara found Everett, a man who didn't see her as a bank account or a safety net, a man who valued her for her mind, her heart, and her strength. She found a career that fulfilled her. She found a home that was truly hers. She found peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from revenge, but the kind that comes from knowing you did the right thing, even when it was the hardest thing. I want you to ask yourself something, and I want you to be honest. Is there someone in your life who treats you the way Clara treated Alara? Is there someone who only calls when they need something? Someone who takes your kindness for weakness? Someone who makes you feel like you're never quite good enough, no matter how much you give? If there is, I want you to hear this. You are not responsible for fixing them. You are not responsible for their happiness. You are not their emotional support animal or their personal bank account. You are a person with your own dreams, your own needs, and your own limits. And it is not selfish to protect those things. It is not selfish to say no. It is not selfish to walk away. Love should not hurt. Real love builds you up. It challenges you to be better, but it doesn't tear you down to do it. Real love respects your boundaries. It doesn't demand that you constantly prove your worth. Real love is a partnership, not a transaction. And if you're not experiencing that, if you're constantly giving and getting nothing in return, then it's time to ask yourself if what you're holding on to is really love or just a habit, just an obligation, just a fear of being alone. Alara's story is a reminder that sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who will hurt us the deepest. But it's also a reminder that we are so much stronger than we think. We can survive heartbreak. We can survive betrayal. We can survive losing people we thought we couldn't live without. And on the other side of that survival, there is something waiting for us. It might be peace. It might be freedom. It might be a love that doesn't come with conditions. But it's there. It's always there. You just have to be brave enough to walk toward it. So if you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own storm, I want you to keep going. I want you to know that the pain you're feeling right now is not the end of your story. It's just the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where you get to write the rules. A chapter where you get to decide who is worthy of your time and your energy and your love. A chapter where you finally put yourself first. Because here's the truth. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot heal others when you are still bleeding. And you cannot build a beautiful life on a foundation of resentment and obligation. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for the people who truly care about you is to let go of the people who don't. Alara walked into that wedding expecting to find answers. She walked out with something far more valuable. She walked out with her dignity intact. And that is a victory that no one can ever take away from her. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something, if it made you think about your own life and your own relationships, then please take a moment to subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another story. And leave a comment below. I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved? How did you find the strength? Your story might be the one that helps someone else find their own courage. And don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for each other is simply remind each other that we're not alone. Until next time, remember this. Your worth is not determined by how much you give to others. It is inherent. It is unchangeable. It is yours. And no one can take that away from you. Not your sister. Not your ex. Not anyone. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourselves. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. Because you are. You always have been. You just needed to see it for yourself.